basically they were unions, and these unions, they were supposed to be fighting for the rights of the common worker. But then in that time, too, you get the gangsters, who are individuals dealing with the underworld or prohibition, how they became, they started to use the Teamsters as tools to move and negotiate and transfer wealth, because, if you had a person who owned an industry and the workers called a strike, like the truckers union called a strike, that meant you couldn't move your products across the country. So they could freeze you and almost extort you by using the unions. So, and then the vice versa, the other part, and this is why I talk about the gangster part of it. And the other part was that if I owned an industry or a company and I had the mob backing me, then that meant that I could kind of squeeze those who are the rioters or the Teamsters in order to get the effect I want. And ultimately the effect is always about money. It's about greed. So interesting enough, we're talking about 1917 up to 1920s, and you can see how it's mirroring the effect in 2020. And then the other part is that the ideology after coming out of the Spanish flu, you had people just couldn't wait to get out. It's like it's like being bottled up or practicing social distancing was such a pressure on them, is that when they got an opportunity to cut loose, they really cut loose. So you got to look at even like the style of dress. It used to be a time where women were more conservative with their style of dress. Going into, your 1920s, you had this huge release where, the women's style of dress changed. Was avid that smoking was becoming a regular thing, as well as drinking alcohol in public became like a thing, or drinking alcohol became a thing, And it was, at first it was a lot of taboo, and then the women's style of dress, the dresses got a little shorter, and, the sexuality of females at that time became more expressive right around the 1920s. So it's like you can see how, like, those things are still mirroring today. And, of course, the style of music changed. It's like it was at a cultural change, and then, like I said, you were dealing with prohibition. We were dealing with prohibition at the time, which meant you was dealing with alcohol, or the consumption of alcohol, the sale of alcohol. And what's interesting enough is they were at a point where alcohol was illegal, but the government was getting ready to turn the tables and make it legal. Now, hint, the mirror today, and which we'll get on in the next segment, is now we're dealing with the issue of marijuana. And now the government is seriously and already somewhat moving in a direction to legalize marijuana. So it's like, and that's here in 2020. So it's like so many mirrors to those days, to these days. It's like this, the gangster mentality has a thread. It's a thread from 1920 on up to 2020. It's a gangster mentality, whereas the gangster mentality is a mindset that we're going to take what we want by hook or crook, and we're not too concerned about who it hurts, And a lot of times in that process, the people who are underserved or the poor are the ones who carry the weight of that mentality. So this is the conversation that we're having as to, the ills that are in society and how they mirror from 1920 to 2020. And there's so many different crevices of just that gangster mindset, that's still here, that has actually gotten a rebirth. The other issue in the 1920s was the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. In that time, like I said, the mindset from the president was keep America American. So with that being said, you had a lot of the Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian, I guess what they considered to be nationalists, and I guess today we consider to be patriots, is that at that point, that movement got a strong rise. It's like the white supremacist mindset, became a real strong focal point during that time. And it's coming out of a time of oppression. You got people who were scrambling, trying to put food on the table. And they felt, as though, they were going to protect their own interests. And a lot of that came at the cost of creating fear and hatred. And that fear and hatred bolstered the country into a place of high racial issues like the Jim Crow laws and things like that were put in place. So it's like that climate now has returned. And the other part is our responsibility during that time, because there were some very positive movements that happened in that time too, because you had like Madam C.J. Walker, she took off at that time.
Yes.
So that was exciting. You got a black female entrepreneur who would become an inventor and then to become a major retailer in the United States and the Caribbean. So it's like those are big positives, But a lot of that has to do with people in the African American community pooling money. So like you also had like Maggie Walker.
Yeah, Magdalena Walker.
Yes.
She was an activist, newspaper editor. Mm-hmm. She also was the first African female bank president.
Mm-hmm.
I also wrote about Eunice Huntington Carter, a black activist, lawyer, and the first woman to receive a Harlem Writers Guild. So there was a lot of powerful women coming up during that era.
A lot of powerful people of color.
People of color, really, yes.
But it had a lot to do with the fact that, we harnessed the power of our dollar during that time because, it was a lot of racial segregation at that time. So that meant that you had to spend a lot of we bought black because we had to, you know what I mean? And there was some smart people who learned how to take our dollars and build in our communities. So like we had Black Wall Street was established during that time. I mean, even here in Richmond, Virginia, we had Darius 2nd Street, but we called that Black Wall Street. And that's where Miss Maggie Walker built her empire, because there were some people who really understood the power of the black dollar and worked it to our benefit, even building. We built some strong economic strongholds during that period of time. So there are some pluses, and it's because of that unity that why we were able to excel even in a time of adversity.
Yes.
And I'm going in towards the end. I do believe that it's time for us to come back together in order to share our resources, in order to build strength.
Build our communities back up.
And build our communities back up. It's just high time that we do that. We need to have churches back, schools and banks, and then reinvesting in our communities in order to change some of this blight out, and try to work with getting away from drug addiction and things like that. So we need to rebuild one another at this time. And it's a time of sharing and caring. And I think it's a time for believing and achieving, but we first got to get back to putting the great I am at the top so we can learn to respect one another. So I believe we have about another 3 minutes. We can really go into a wonderful break, and we'll see you in just a few minutes.
VMP Media is currently servicing clients with podcasts, webinars, and remote live streaming needs. Email us at info@vmpmagazine.com or contact our Director of Sales, Ms. Karen McConnell-Jones, at 202-904-1000. VNP, inspiring our community.
Welcome back, everyone. We're about to go into our second part of Modern Gangster 2020. This part, we're going to move towards the 2020s and what we're dealing with now as for the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as dealing with gangster politics, and also dealing with how we as women and people are getting so just dealing with who we are, coming to our sexuality, also dealing with our hair during this time, because a lot of people aren't able to go to their hairstylist, and just kind of want to end on a positive note to inspire everyone, even throughout this time, how we still will grow, persevere, and be at our best. All right.
Well, 2020. It's an awesome time that we're living in. We're living in a time where we have to be really careful about where we go and what we say.
Social distancing.
Who you allow inside of your circle.
Yes.
It's a tough time right now when it comes down to economics, because we have over 30 million people who apply for unemployment.
Yes.
Which is unprecedented. Yes. Never before situations like this. We have major retailers failing.
Restaurants.
Small businesses
trying to get loans.
Everybody's looking for a handout because we are literally struggling in fear of our lives. So, we're not spending money. And a lot of us don't have money to spend because we're out of work. So this is an interesting time. And now we really have to depend on, I'm going to say, the Most High to get us through it. Whereas economically, spiritually, physically, mentally, we really do need the Most High more than ever, And it's an interesting time now because just like we were talking about in the last segment, how we are, like the 1920s, we're mirroring that in 2020.
Yeah.
A lot of the same issues still here. When it deals with female sexuality or male sexuality, period, is a big issue now, because now it's like we're pressing the gas with, how we express ourselves sexually, whether it be on every platform, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, however you're expressing yourself, it's truly a time of, sexual revolution. So that's one issue that, we're dealing with.
Also, during this time period, dealing with this COVID-19, it's going to be interesting how people are really going to be able to go out, socialize with others. As for, I don't think it's going to be the same for right now, for a while, especially going out, hanging out. You got to really be careful who you're dealing with, the people you let around you, and also making sure you're okay. I think you got to think about your health, building up your immune system, making sure you're healthy, as well as trying to just survive out here. I mean, it's really going to be interesting what the future beholds, but I tell you, I think this is a wake-up call for America, for everyone, because it's really hitting their African-American people the worst. And I do believe this is a time when we really have to be more health conscious and take care of ourselves, because a lot of people are dying because of underlying health diseases, illnesses. So this is like a wake-up call. It's time to get yourself in shape, eat better, cut back from all this meat we're eating also, because if these meat plants are throwing away a lot of meat, and honestly, they're got a lot of workers who are that are tested positive for COVID. So